Thank you, everybody. So yes, we're Business of Creating with the wonderful Writers Guild Foundation. Today, we are here to learn about producing, marketing, and distributing faith-based projects. Let me see. Normally, we do a little bit of networking for everybody in the beginning. Oh my God, Emily, already my favorite. She says she loves this, and we've only just started. Yay! I love it. So everybody, Michael, do we want to do our introduction of us first? So we are.
Actually, if I'll pull up the slide first and kind of do the preamble of certain talking points, and we'll kind of get that out of the way and then go from there. How's that? So I'm going to share the screen. Well, actually, I don't even think we even need to share the screen at the, well, we could do it a little bit. Let's just do this right now. Sharing the screen, so everyone should be able to see stuff first. And I think, Jen, we talked about, it's the business of it. I think, first of all, we're glad you're all able to join. The one thing to know, there's a few things we wanted to kind of start off with is they always tell you when you go to a cocktail party, never talk about religion and politics. Here we're talking about religion, right? But this is about the business of creating content, right? And this is not about the panel, like the faith of the individual panelists. This is about the content. The term, also, just so everyone's aware, the term faith-based is often, particularly in North America, associated with Christian content. For the panel, we'll be more specifically. So when we use faith-based, we'll say Christian-based or Muslim-based or Jewish-based, right? Jewish faith. The other thing too is probably people are wondering, like, why these religions? Well, these tend to be the biggest ones in the world, in the US particularly, since we're focusing here. We could have chosen from many others, many of the wonderful ones, but we had to make a choice in the number just for this panel. It's not about, let's say, pushing one religion or another. It's about how to write, produce, market, and distribute content to a wider audience. On a side note, here's the thing is even though we're trying to find one image to represent the different religions as hard as you can see here, if you Google prayer or faith, you get thousands of images, and I'm not even sure that I chose even one that can be representative, right? So we're all learning, and these panels are put together to make us better at content creators. People will use terms and words differently in this big, wide world of ours. And if there's certain terms and words are not used properly, let's let each other constructively know. And the proper way they should be used or referenced. So, but at the end of the day, have fun with this, ask questions, right? Going on to the next one, what we'd like to do is we partnered very closely with the Writers Guild. We'd like to throw it over to Annie to talk a little bit about our wonderful, wonderful sponsor and co-sponsor.
Hey everybody, I'm Enid Portuguez, the Director of Communications and Events at the Writers Guild Foundation. We're very excited to partner with Business of Creating for today's panel. If you're new to the foundation, we're an LA-based nonprofit organization dedicated to the craft of writing for the screen. We offer services to the screenwriting community, such as a script library and archives, virtual events with film and TV writers, and community outreach programs. For more information on what we do, please visit our website at wgfoundation.org or follow us on social media. I'll throw those handles and links in the chat. Thanks so much and hope to see you at more events.
Great, thanks, Enid. So just a little bit about us. We were co-founded by Jennifer, as you know, and me. We won't go through into this, so you probably read all about us, but if you want to follow us at businessofcreating.org or anything on Instagram and Facebook, and so on. But it's really, here it is to make our content, help with content creators and make our industry stronger. So also just to be aware is if you want to see, this is going to be our 22nd panel, and we've done them across various projects. I mean, everything from unit photography to financing to producing to film festivals, creating ripomatics and sizzles, you name it. It's all here to help the content industry, the creative industry. And if you guys have any suggestions of ones in the future, please let us know. And the other thing to note too is if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's going to be two places. As Jen already mentioned, some people are already chatting. There's also a separate button for Q&A. What we want to encourage is, because everything is done virtually now, and when we started these panels, these were really done in person. It was a great way to get to know people before and after the panels when you're physically connected. Very often we'd start it off before we begin, we'd say, introduce yourself to the person to your left, introduce yourself to the person to the right, because they will probably, and chances are, help you with your projects in this industry, and we're here to help each other. So if you can, feel free to go into the chat, introduce yourself, tell us where you're from. It's always exciting to see, particularly in this virtual world, to see where people are coming from. Because I think, Jennifer, like, we've had people from where? Like a bunch.
Oh, I mean, obviously California and New York, and we've had, pick a state, we've had it. We have people showing up today from Australia, from Canada. We've had people from South Africa, from New Zealand. Oh, wow. Right? I'm so excited that people from all over the world really go, okay, this is worth, making another pot of coffee and staying up for this one. I got to get it live so I can answer my questions about my own projects. Yeah, preach. I finished the coffee and put some water in, but yeah, there's plenty going on with that right now. But yes, so excellent, everybody. Yeah, take a moment. Who are you? What do you do? Where are you from? We've gotten some virtual writers groups and different groups just from doing these panels. Awesome. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I got my notes here. I got my pen. Indeed, you know where I'm going. Here we come with the heavy hitters, everybody. Please welcome our panelists today to discuss the business side of faith-based projects. First up, we have Amy Conley. Woo! Imagine 100+ people applauding for you right now, Amy. Amy is an entertainment marketing executive who spent her career working at movie studios such as Sony Pictures and Warner Brothers. After 2 decades working in digital marketing on over 200 films, okay, hello, notes are coming. Amy knows what truly drives audiences to buy tickets, whether that's faith-based or overall, or that Venn diagram in the middle. So it's how well you connect your story with people and communicate your understanding back to them, which is especially relevant for our Christian faith-based audience. Amy is passionate about social media and storytelling, as her kids frequently watch TikTok videos with her after they complete their schoolwork. Amy holds a BA in communications from Purdue and is currently writing a book about her spiritual awakening. Everybody, welcome Amy Conley. Woo! I'm going with my ladies right now. Next up is Susan Youssef. Susan is a writer-director of 2 feature films that have premiered at Cannes, Venice, Toronto, and Sundance film festivals. Check it out. She was commissioned by 21st Century Fox to make a short and is currently a 21st Century Fox directing fellow. Everybody, let's welcome Susan. And next to Susan, we have Iman Zawahry. Iman. We love this. Iman is an American Muslim writer, director, producer, focusing on comedy. She is the recipient of an Emmy Award for all of her work and a Lincoln Center Artist Academy and Princess Grace Foundation's Fellow. Currently, she is a professor at the University of Florida. And Iman co-founded the Islamic Scholarship Fund Film Grant to create the first ever American Muslim film grant. She recently completed her directorial debut feature film, Americanish, which is the first American Muslim rom-com made by American Muslim women about American Muslim women. I can't wait to dive in and hear more, everybody. Welcome, Iman.
Can I just say, I love your photo too. It looks like you're having so much fun making projects. It's the best photo ever.
Absolutely. We're gonna move over and be with you at University of Florida so we can all play together. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, it's my ladies team. It's Beth Kruvant. Beth, welcome. Beth has a great, interesting history here. She's the director and producer for Good Footage Productions. She's produced multiple documentaries, including Levinsky Park, David Bromberg, Unsung Treasure, and Heart of Stone. These are all available on Amazon Prime. We know what we're watching tonight. Okay, now during COVID, Beth made a bit of a turn and became the co-artistic director of the Berkshire Jewish Film Festival. Love that we're going to get both sides of the equation with you, Beth. Beth is a graduate of Barnard College, Nova Law School, and the New York Film Academy. Everybody, let's welcome Beth. And now for my heavy-hitting gentlemen. Next up, we have Michael Swanson. Michael is a TV studio executive, film producer, theater producer, Emmy Award winner, and CEO of Faith Filmworks. As the Senior Vice President at Universal Studio Group, Michael is responsible for the production of Parks and Rec, The Good Place, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Master of None, Good Girls, Never Have I Ever, and Community. Wow. Michael has produced the movies All About You, All About Us, For the Love of Ruth, To Hell and Back, and The Wayman Tisdale Story. Michael is also involved with the Tony Award-winning Broadway musical Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations. Everybody welcome Michael. And last but not least, it's my partner in crime. It's Michael Fisk. Michael, of course, yeah, Michael. Michael is the, of course, co-founder of our panel series here, Business of Creating. Michael is also a senior marketing executive in the entertainment industry. He's spearheaded over 400 marketing campaigns for studios such as Sony Pictures, Lionsgate, NBC Universal, Warner Brothers, and currently MGM. Michael also runs InterMark, the international consulting practice, focusing on helping filmmakers, producers, directors, and distributors with long-term marketing and strategy. His passion is making your passion project succeed. Okay, and a fun fact we have about Michael, his favorite marketing campaigns that he's worked on include the James Bond franchise. He's done the last 5. And La La Land. Everybody welcome Michael and welcome our amazing panel.
Thank you, Jen. No, and I kind of just say, and Jen, I totally apologize because usually in the beginning I'd talk about you more, and to everyone there listening in. And Jennifer has been phenomenal. I mean, as the co-founder of this, but she is such a talented producer and writer across so many different genres, from sci-fi to comedy. So she sees the broad spectrum of everything, and I have such a true pleasure and so much fun always doing these things with you. So thank you so much to Jen.
Thank you. I'm always like, I want to hear about everybody else. Yeah. All right, everybody, let's do this. Pick up your pen, get your keyboard ready, warm up your fingers. Let's take some notes.
Perfect.
So, ladies and gentlemen, okay, here we go. I love that we have these wonderful slides to keep us going. So the populations within the US and faith-based core and wider audiences. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so the reason we will do these really quickly, we just kind of put kind of in perspective of where very often when you hear about faith-based, that's why we always say faith-based typically tends to be Christian-based. When you look at the US and North America, and again, this is North America, we're not talking about worldwide, right? This is North America audiences. You definitely see, and this research is from the 2019 Pew Research. And this is just to give you an idea of a business perspective, right? And they break down the Christian faiths here, which have a dozen or so categories and subcategories, not shown here. Obviously, Protestant is the biggest in North America, followed by Catholics. And then it's kind of broken also down, and you'll hear us talk a little bit about the evangelical base versus other Christian faiths. Then you also have the Jewish and Muslims represented as the 2 biggest faiths in the US, following Christianity. The key thing to note here, if you look at the screen on the side right there, it does, it's interesting to note is that the reason, like we were saying, is like very often things are being faith-based, but the purpose of this panel is like, how can you also make it wider if possible, right? And it's taking that core and reaching a wider audience. The other thing too, I think to note about this, if you go back to just the overall stats, it doesn't mean just, if you see the Christian faith-based is obviously bigger here in the US, but it doesn't mean that you can't make money focusing on other faiths like Judaism and Islam. As you'll see later on, it's how it's properly portrayed, how the religions are properly portrayed and characters of faith are done in your stories. And we'll talk about that, even if your project doesn't happen to be about a religious theme. So just keep that in mind. So there's these numbers that kind of gives you an idea of box office and even for TV shows. But it's just because you might see a smaller audience doesn't mean that there isn't important elements to how you create your projects around these different faiths, okay? The other thing too is we'll just kind of kick it off too is part of the reason why Jen and I decided to do this panel is, part of it is because you saw the Christian faith base is kind of big. We tried to do this right before Easter because if you look at this kind of like that pink line, this is where a lot of the Christian-based films tend to be released. These are the theatrical release dates. The reason they do that is because usually the beginning of April tends to be when Easter kind of moves around, but it's around that time. And that's where you see a lot of interest in the faith-based films. It doesn't mean that you can't have, as you can see here with the other ones through May through December over the years, you can also release there. But they tend to be clustered in that like 2-3 month window that you see on top. leading up to Easter. So that's something to consider when you're writing, particularly from a film perspective, and trying to figure out like, where do you want to kind of put your distribution. Now with everything that's changed with COVID, things have obviously switched. There's a lot more with theatrical and VOD and day and date releases. But anyway, we just want to kind of put these two slides that you saw there up front to kind of give some sort of like baseline perspective, as we kind of dive into the different opportunities here. We wanted to kind of go into this slide a bit too, is to show kind of the opportunities when writing about Muslim characters. And I think, Jen, we want to kind of open it up here to the team here a little bit more. And I don't know if Susan and Iman in particular, I know we've kind of talked a little bit in the past and then through email, if you guys have any thoughts and discussion points, you wanted to kind of talk about here.
Yeah, we're talking about films with Muslim characters, which are extremely rare. I always like to say we are a new generation of, Muslim storytellers, Muslim filmmakers, or characters with Muslim storylines in them. I myself, I'm one of the first hijabi female filmmakers, and it's 2021, right? And I graduated film school in the late 2000s. And so this push, kind of seeing more characters with Muslims in it, has been, really fantastic as we're trying to mold our story and to humanize, right? It's also interesting too, because I was just talking to Michael about this. Aladdin, for example, is it's this weird conglomeration of culture where it's like they're not Muslim, but it's an Arab story, but then also there's a lot of Indian clothing and kind of culture that comes into it when you're talking about different types of characters. So kind of what I work on, and I would love to hear Susan's idea about this too, is like trying to differentiate, what Middle Eastern is, what Muslim is, what Indian is, what Persian is, right? Because it's all kind of lumped together. And I think that's really important for us to be able to tell our own stories from our own perspective to keep it really authentic. Yeah. Susan?
Hi, Iman. It's so wonderful to finally meet you through this video chat because Iman and I have never met actually in person.
I know.
But yeah, it's such a delight and such an honor. I've known Iman maybe through the internet, through emails, maybe for about 5 or 6 years.
I know, it's so great.
Yeah.
Big fan of Susan.
Oh, thank you. I'm so moved by all the community building that Iman has done, and I can't wait to see her first feature. I can't wait to root her on. I felt very inspired by Aladdin, which I saw on a plane in February 2019, and it was a film I had been afraid to watch because I remember as a little girl really loving the Aladdin cartoon, and then later on being studying it when I started studying Orientalism in college and realizing what a problem the cartoon was. But when I boarded the plane right before COVID in February 2019 on the way to LA from New York, and I watched the entire plane watching this ancient Arabic story, which I believe is pre-Islamic. I felt this pride inside of me that we were watching actual Arab and Muslim American actors in leads. And I love the convergence, of course, with Will Smith and the overlaps in Arab and African American experiences, which I have found to be deeply inspiring. And I had earlier, discussed with Michael, he had suggested a few films, and I asked him, I said, please bring up Aladdin, because I found that film as the first signifier to me that I could start really moving out of currently I've been creating Arab art house films in Arabic first, and then moving into making my first American feature film. But watching Aladdin, I felt, oh my goodness, I could write a studio level Muslim American feature film. And when I say Muslim American, and maybe Iman will agree, I'm talking about people of a Muslim background, not necessarily faith-based themes, although my work specifically has always obsessively been about Sufism and the search for the divine, and has been influenced by that. But when I look at Muslim American, I just, at this very moment in time, are looking at who's in the film. The Marjoun short that I made that led to my feature, I released, and I will show my age, as a student film in 2006 at Sundance. And it took me, the feature came out at the same time as Aladdin. And so I felt like this film is very important to me. Maybe Iman, I don't know if it had that much importance to you, but it was very heartening, especially because Dr. Evelyn Al-Sultani, who created a test with Sue Obeidi for Muslim representation, had been a consultant on that film. So I feel my cheeks are getting hot. I'm blushing because I'm really revealing my heart here. Because for me, and I almost want to cry. I know it sounds maybe so basic, but the fact that my short went to Sundance in 2006, it took me until this summer 2020, just that passed, to release it internationally as a feature. 14 years shows you how much internal separation and segregation I had done from American film. And Aladdin, especially because of the actors that they cast, made me feel like we were beginning to come home and I could start to imagine bigger.
Susan, I just want to validate. That's so awesome. I'm so glad. It's interesting because when I saw that Aladdin was put on there, I was questioning. I didn't know it came from you, because that's such a real and authentic story in the sense that we're trying to see something of ourselves in studios and princesses that look like us, or that are from our culture. I will say, though, just a small correction: there aren't Muslim actors in Aladdin. They're actually, Mena Massoud is a Coptic Christian, and so is the lead actress. So,
I thought the Jafar, but not the character who plays Jafar is Dutch Moroccan. I know him from his first work.
Yes.
He's a supporting lead. He's a supporting lead. I know he's not the main lead.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm sorry. You know better than me. I didn't know that one of them was even Christian. You see, that's how. Yeah, but I knew one of them, the Jafar character, I know he's not a main lead, but he's a supporting lead.
You're right. Yeah.
I had no idea they were both Christian. They're both Christian. I had no idea.
No, right. I think you guys bring up really good points, because it's like, I think for those who are writing and producing, and filmmakers, this conversation in itself is so critical to have, because you're like, okay, how do you portray properly? Like, is it, and for everyone to actually know, like for you, Susan, to be so impacted by it, to understand even Mon, like, it kind of shows like, okay, people are paying attention, right? And it behooves us as content creators to delve into those type of issues. And also, I think I was glad, Susan, that you kind of put it there, because I think we had another one, an animation that didn't do well, but it kind of shows Aladdin was such an important one. It's like, look, a lot, like Halal might be smaller, right? And the others might be, Wajda might be smaller, but there's other ones there are big studio ones, right? So those are critical. Before we, because I know just for time, was before we jump off to the next one, I know, do we want to talk a little bit about, like, I forget who was talking to, not issues, but concerns with the Big Sick, and just on how that was done, right? Because it was a festival, award darling, right, for a bit,
Yeah, so that was me, Michael. And it goes back to like Aladdin as well. I know so many Muslims that kind of fight that stereotype and had to fight like the stereotype of being Aladdin, or called this or called that. And so it's like, being a Muslim, it was hard to fight that later on. And with the Big Sick, which I cannot take away, because that was Kamal Nayanji's story, who I love. He's an amazing actor, activist, comedian. It just felt a little bit heartbreaking, because it perpetuated a stereotype a bit, that in order for him to be quote unquote American, he had to fit into a certain mold. And he said a line in the film that broke my heart so much. And I was like so disappointed, because Judd Apatow was like one of my favorite filmmakers in a comedy. And he took Kamal Nayanji. So it's a scene when he's talking to his parents, and his parents say, he says to his parents, "You guys want me to live this American dream, yet you don't want me to live American." And I'm like, oh my gosh. And he's talking about going out drinking, marrying someone that's not a part of the culture, not practicing. And it just really broke my heart, because I've been, as an American Muslim filmmaker, activist, storyteller, is showing that they're not mutually exclusive. To be American is to be Muslim, it's to be who I am, it's to be able to practice. So that really kind of broke me a bit in terms of Big Sick. Yeah.
if I could jump in and kind of throw it open to everybody, because I was thinking this exact same thing, and Daniel Barak in the, Q&A chat, I'm like, okay, he's saying exactly what I was just thinking, which was, okay, what's that sweet spot then? And again, this is kind of for everybody, okay, well, then do we really need that, Muslim actor as opposed to a Christian actor, when that maybe that's bigger box office, so what's the, and then when we were looking also at Jewish films and looking at Christian films, what's the right fit as far as authenticity, and also going, well, but this actor is going to bring in more box office, and they look the role, they are knocking it out of the park, they just aren't necessarily, if you were creating your own person from scratch, you would include some, other little extra salt or something in there, and the spices. So how are we thinking about that? What's the sweet spot between marketability versus staying 1,000% true to the faith of it?
I think that you begin by bringing directors like me and Iman to direct the work. And I think that that's already the vision behind the lens. And I feel that when we come forward as directors, we cast as authentically as we can, because we're the directors. And it is true. Like when we were casting my feature, we just didn't have attachable A-list Arab American, Muslim American talent. We had one actor, Dominic Raines, who had just won an award at Tribeca, but I mean, he's very accomplished, but his accolades mirror mine, which is great. We're doing great, but we're not, so it was difficult. There was no pool to pull from, unless I was jumping all the way up to Salma Hayek, who wasn't Muslim American either. So so the idea is that you grow the directors and that we begin to grow the talent. And yeah, that's the studio giving space that we can put lesser known talent. And I think someone like Ava DuVernay in A Wrinkle in Time, she casted authentically, and it was a lesser known actress. But then that begins to create space. So I know for me, I think when you begin to make more space for the creator, that's when things begin to change. And I also think as creators, we have to identify, and this includes me, my own fault, that we are now eligible and permitted to go to another level. For example, my first feature, Habibi, was at Venice and TIFF. It had a theatrical release. It was distributed by Entertainment One, and the US sales agent was Paradigm Talent Agency. The sales agent at Paradigm called me and he said, try to submit it for Oscars as a Palestinian film. And it was the only film out of Palestine. And I never tried. To have it be an Oscar contender. And I think that was the beginning for me of entering the market with a film as a feature filmmaker. And just like I took so long to expand my Sundance short into a feature, it took me until my second feature to try to make it an Oscar contender, to force myself forward. So I feel that it's twofold. One, that creators have to become willing and less biased against themselves, and this is a true issue. And also feel their own privilege to unify with each other and to open the doors for each other. And that's why it's so important for, that what I really love is that you had me and Iman at the same panel, that it wasn't just one of us. And now I ask Iman for her ideas. I'm sure she has many.
How can we resist? Yeah. But I do also want to check in with, Amy, Michael, and Beth, because they're coming at it from the other side of it with more of the marketing and the business side and the, let's make sure that we have profit so we can do the next one too. So may I jump in and ask, Amy, would you like to jump in and share on that? And then, Michael and Beth, and obviously still it's a discussion, but I want to make sure we catch both sides of the equation on this.
I think from a marketing point of view, it's always interesting because what I have found interesting, especially in the Christian space, which is where I've worked primarily, some of the actors are not necessarily active Christian believers, if you will, or practice their faith, and yet they're in a very spiritual film. And maybe they grew up in I'm making this up, a Baptist background, a Protestant background, but maybe they have now strayed from the church, and they're very open about it. But yet we need to market this film exactly to that audience. So what I've always advised is be honest, like don't pretend you're something you're not. And if you are speaking at a church, you can say, I am, I used to be of your Christian faith, and I've had questions, and I'm going through my own process, and let them speak authentically to who they are, because that is so much more, that's stronger than having an actor who is preaching something that maybe they do not feel. And especially with, I think, any religion, no one wants to feel like they are supporting something where someone got cast and they might not be going through something. For example, when I worked with on Miracles from Heaven, Jennifer Garner happened to be going through a very publicly strong divorce with Ben Affleck, and there was a lot of, he was having an affair, and there was a bunch of stuff happening. And she actually had people on the set pray for her, and pray for her marriage, and pray for her, the resolution of it, and for her kids. And it was a really beautiful way that she handled it as just a person. And it doesn't matter what your faith is. And I think those are the things that, she would talk about when it was appropriate. But that wasn't what the marketing campaign was about. It wasn't about her marriage. It was about who she was, and she could tell it to the right audience and what she felt comfortable. So I think it's about finding that comfort level with every actor and where they're at.
And if I could, excellent, thank you, Amy, excellent point. Michael, if I could check in with you about that, because you're coming at it, you're straddling both sides of that equation, both as the producer and as the studio side of things. Do you find that to also be the case for you as for how you're casting and how you're kind of fitting that in between, into the beautiful part of the Venn diagram where it all works together?
When I approach casting with the director, and most times that director is my wife, Christine Swanson, we work together. We approach casting understanding that, one, the story is the star, and number two, that it's so important to cast the best person for the role. And so we don't do stunt casting, for example, because casting, I would say, is maybe 75 or 80% of the storytelling. And so you have to capture that audience's attention, and he or she has to go on this journey throughout this movie with this actor. And so if you have the wrong person in that role, the wrong actor in the role, it's just not going to ring true for the audience. It's not going to be authentic. And I think you'll lose the audience as a result. And so, every movie I've done, you may not always have the most popular actor, but if that script is well written, and if he or she is a phenomenal talent, then you buy into it and you root for him or her, and you appreciate their struggle and all the things that they're going through, and when they're redeemed at the end. And so overall, the way we operate is to get the best person. Now, there are most of the movies I do have predominantly Black cast. And so, and I would also say our niche market is probably first and foremost Black women, many of whom are Christian, churchgoers anyway. And so we also take that into account. And when we cast, sure, there are people who are very popular to our niche audience, to our demographic, who are most times coming to see our movie. And we take that into account too. But again, at the end of the day, the best actor has to get the role.
This is good news for so many of us, because we always get told, well, you need to get that A-list person. Well, yes, please. Can you give me their direct number? Sure. But, from a realistic standpoint, okay, great. You're telling us, everybody's saying, hey, it's got to be the right person. And then that audience is going to continue to grow for your film because they've done such a superior job portraying the character properly. So we're all kind of breathing a sigh of relief on that. So thank you, everybody. Beth, I want to jump over to you to get kind of the Jewish take on it, if you will, because that's also our next slide. So, so what is something you need to be aware of then when you're focusing specifically on the Jewish-based audience?
Okay. Well, as you said, I wear two hats. One is the filmmaker and the other as now a programmer. So as a programmer, which is as of recent, I look for, first and foremost, good films. The film has to be good. And then I say, well, okay, this is a great film. Is it Jewish? And I have one film in our season coming up, which is really not Jewish, but I made a stretch and I said it has Jewish values. So I kind of like brought it in because it was just such a great, relevant film that hasn't been seen widespread. It's one of the Agnieszka Holland's films from 2019. And as a filmmaker, interestingly enough, all three of the films that you mentioned deal with shared legacies of African American and African Africans with Jewish culture and people. The David Bromberg, I have the mayor brings David to a church, and it shows the influence of the church music on his music, and he's a musician.
Yeah.
And then I have Heart of Stone, which is about gangs in Newark, New Jersey in Philip Roth's era. Alumni come to partner with the principal of the school today, and that deals with African American Black Muslims and how that has influenced the gang members, and has been a part of the area in which Jewish alumni live in as well. So you have this shared community. And then in Levinsky Park, I have Muslim Sudanese and Christian Eritreans and Ethiopians commingling with Jewish Israelis. So in all three of my last films, I've had this yearning, I guess, to bring out the shared legacies, the shared, just communication amongst disparate populations. And so that's on the one hand, and on the other, as I said, is just looking for great films.
I love that combination. Thank you. And I love how you were talking about that. It doesn't just have to be Jewish, Christian, Muslim. No, let's, melting pot it a bit more. I love that we're able to intertwine the different faiths that way and have even better stories. Which actually kind of brings up our next.
I just want to say that it's complicated too. It's not just one or the other. It's a huge mix of a lot of different things.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Michael, we're jumping to the next one because what that was Beth brought up exactly. It's like we planned it. Our next point being talking about if the movie is faith-based versus just if the character happens to be Jewish, happens to be Muslim, happens to be Christian, happens to be polytheistic, whatever, So it's what are the similarities and differences with the focus of the film? How does that play through?
Well, I'm looking at the films that you brought up, and interestingly enough, the Oliver Sacks we showed, because I actually love Oliver Sacks, and I think he's an incredible person. And there's a little bit of a Jewish aspect to it, but other than that, it's really Oliver Sacks. And I don't know what the last one on the right is. The others we haven't shown, but on the right.
These are from the Berkshire Jewish Film Festival site. So just.
Okay. Well, maybe it was before my time. Yeah. I didn't choose the other ones. Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't have either. Like Uncut Gems, really? That wasn't. I don't think that they showed that. But American Pickle, I don't know. That was on HBO.
Those two were not. The ones on the three right side were from Berkshire.
Okay, so Oliver Sacks was my time. And then Golda, I think was part of my time too. I don't remember the other two. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, we could do,
Well,
yeah.
but again, sorry, I'm jumping in because this plays to our understanding of, oh, okay, well, American Pickle. I saw that more recently, but so that was definitely.
I saw that. I was not a fan, but so I look for films that move me and that I think are done well. And even if it's like this season, we're showing one about a civil rights lawyer down in New Orleans and his fight to, in the courts. And, so, I mean, it just has to be a captivating story for me. If I don't like the film, even if it's got great content, if the way it's done does not move me, I won't bring it to the festival.
Fair enough. Absolutely right. So I want to jump a little bit further ahead because no, it's 4:45. Can we stop time, please? Where's the time stop, right? But so we were looking, Michael, if we can jump ahead to the one with Transplant and Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, where we're talking about similarities and differences between films and TV shows that focus on the faith of the characters, or the faith versus characters who happen to be Jewish, Muslim, polytheistic, Christian, pick one. Can we talk a little bit more about those, both from a story point of view and then again from the business side of it? How do you market that? Do you market something like that? To me, an example, and of course it's one we don't have up here, but for me, when I first heard about Soul Surfer, to me, that was first a surfing movie. Oh, and then it's a Christian movie, because that was how it was marketed to me, because that would, catch my interest more to be in the ocean and the surf, and playing with some dolphins. And then, oh yeah, plus it's got some great values. And I think that also swings back to our point of faith-based does not necessarily mean it has to be about a specific religion. I think, Michael Swanson, you were talking about this earlier, where it's more promoting a certain set of values, which I think is a lot of time cross faith.
Yeah,
I made up a new term, y'all.
Absolutely. A lot of the at least the stories that I produce are universal in theme. People can connect with them. They perhaps give you a renewed sense of hope, or some of the love stories we've done, have you want to find love again. And so there is something that when you make a movie that can connect with people's hearts, they leave that movie watching experience differently. And that is our goal. And so it may not be, one of these more traditional movies, the ones that we do, where it talks specifically about the Bible or is, overtly, a religious film, but there is, there are values throughout the film. There is goodness and love and kind of the fruits of the spirit kind of in our work, because we're Christian filmmakers. And also similar to how a lot of the Hollywood movies were decades ago, family friendly, values based. And so that's what we've continued. Now, we've also produced movies, and they were on the slide a couple of slides ago, for example, For the Love of Ruth, which was a contemporary retelling of the biblical story of Ruth. And we also did To Hell and Back, which is the contemporary story of Job. So it runs the gamut, but there's so many ways you can connect with people, and it doesn't have to just be in one box when you tell stories.
Who is your usually target audience? Would you say you're going after the faith-based or more just overall value-based? Is it, I know you mentioned, Black females tend to be a big audience, but is that the audience you go for, or just happens to be the audience, or is that the core audience?
Well, that's the core audience, but I would say we're filmmakers first, trained filmmakers. And so we make movies for everyone, but most times they're Black characters, Black actors in our films, but you can swap them out with Chinese actors, with Jewish actors, because again, I go back to the story being the star. And if people can relate to the story and connect and want to go on this journey with these characters, then I think that's a win-win. But if I were to put my business hat on, of course, we can market our projects to the faith-based audience, to Black audiences, to movie lovers in general. and hopefully they can come and find something from our work.
And if I could ask a follow-up question on that. So now, are you doing the different styles of marketing concurrently, or are you saying, look, first we're going after, Black African-American females, then we're going for, the surfers, because why not, And so are you doing them all at once? Is it, what are the breaks that you're doing that in?
Yeah, we do it all at once. And I'll give you a really quick example. There was a movie that we did called All About You, which was a romantic comedy, one of the first feature films we did. And the studios said, well, this movie is not edgy enough for the Black audience. And we're like, well, because, there is no violence, no, all the things that they felt would help market the film to this audience. And it also wasn't a solely faith-based type of movie. It was really more of a traditional Hollywood style movie, but an independent film. And it had won all the film festivals. And now we were seeking a theatrical distribution deal. And so that didn't happen. And so I decided to release the movie through our company. And we did a 10-city tour. And we started in Chicago, my hometown. And I rented an 850-seat auditorium inside the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. And to answer your question, Jennifer, we marketed all over the city of Chicago. I would go to bars to promote the film and give away tickets. And then on Sunday, I was inside some of the biggest churches in Chicago with the pastor encouraging his members to come to the museum to see the film. So we had a 10-day run, 17 screenings, and over 5,000 people came to see the movie inside of a museum that we four-walled. And so, the circus was in town, and we had street team postcards that we put on every windshield every night while folks were inside the circus. We, took ads out in certain area codes on BET and some of the other more specifically targeted cable channels in the Black communities in Chicago. And so, it was all across, ads in the Sun-Times, radio across the gamut. So we did it all at once because, again, we kind of became a mini distributor, and we felt this movie would be enjoyed by so many people. The movie played at the Hamptons International Film Festival, and it played at the Pan-African Film Festival in South LA. And I remember at the Hamptons International Film Festival, you always have these Q&As, and there were old Jewish men and women who would stand up like outraged, and they said, who do we need to call to get this movie out? It's so good, Oh,
good.
So we understood who our audience was. If they would just give the types of movies that we produce and the stories we tell a chance, it would resonate with them. And that's what happened.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to check in with everybody else in a second, but Michael, you've given us so many to-do item lists, which is like one of the last things we go, okay, what can we do? What are our action steps? So, okay, everybody, put your running shoes on and your comfy clothes, because you're going to do a lot of grassroots running around as well, and look at the success that has brought. And the fact that you go, okay, we're hitting this film festival over here and this one over here, even though they don't seem like the same fit, they're grabbing what, they're all part of our audience. And the fact that you're just like, okay, we're gonna hit the churches, we're gonna hit, everything, and we're gonna do the postcards, and we got the flyers, and that proves successful. Fantastic, because that's again one of those things. Well, what can I do? While I'm at home, okay, I can create that flyer and I can get that started. And how can we empower ourselves? So I'm so glad this is recorded, because people are going to just be like, rewind, play again, rewind, play again. Wait, I got to do this, Fantastic. And so kind of checking in with my Christian, Jewish, and, Muslim panelists as well. Boy, it's so much fun to just sit and listen to everybody. I wish we could do it for like 6 hours. Have we found, similar guerrilla marketing is helpful? What have your experiences been in your styles of marketing to get your film out there and seen and get the word spread?
Well, I was just going to say, I think to Michael's point, I've gone the other way with sometimes on the marketing standpoint, I remember a film that you guys are going to go, huh? Paul Blart Mall Cop. Anybody remember this one?
Yes.
Yeah. Non-controversial, a guy that's a lonely guy that It's protecting them all from bad guys, right? One of the things I thought was interesting is we actually had a very large Christian and Jewish push for this because it was rated PG. It was for all families. And it was a big family community. Doesn't matter your religion, but it was just a fun family film. And it doesn't matter, again, like what your background is. What do I feel safe and not going to have weird conversations with my kids about is sometimes a really great marketing tactic. And it can get very broad. And what I thought was great is Adam and Kevin James came together and would screen it to their different church groups and communities respectively. And it was very opening and welcome that you can bring families in. So just a different tactic from a film that is not wasn't made for that target audience, but it was something that was broad enough that could bring people in.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, coming from the opposite perspective of that. Fantastic. I love that both options could work.
And they sold lots of Segways.
Yeah. If they weren't a corporate sponsor, they should have been. They're getting a call. You guys, we have a bunch. I'm trying my best to look through the Q&A at the same time. So just, we're doing our best. Everybody who's putting in questions, love that we have them. So let me see. So Susan and Iman, are you finding it similar for when you're, doing your marketing of your projects? And then jumping ahead slightly, apologies, Michael, I'm playing around on our slides, but, in addition to how your marketing plan is going, I would love to know more about, okay, how are you pitching your projects, before, during, after, and, does that change depending on, you're talking to the producing partner, you're talking to potential distribution, you're talking to a studio, you're talking to the agent, as far as, hey, this is a rom-com. Oh no, it's American Muslim female rom-com, etc. Big topics, but let me learn.
Yeah, this has actually been a big challenge for me right now as we're trying to find the home for our film. And I always say this a lot, since I am like more an independent filmmaker, is my challenge has not being like, all the hyphens that I am, Muslim, Egyptian, female. It's been that I make comedies in an independent realm, to kind of pull it up. It's like they usually want to see Muslim women as particularly as being oppressed or victimized or whatnot. And so it's been incredibly challenging. And as we've been packaging Americanish, my feature, which is a comedy, it's been like, okay, do we call it a rom-com? Does that work? And we tried it with, sales agents and festivals. And do we call it a comedy? How do we do our poster? And actually, the Big Sick poster was the motivation for our poster, which, I really loved and I thought was really great because it's a family-driven film. Our film is, and I thought they did a really great job with that. So another thing is because we don't have, and I keep saying this over and over, we're such a new generation of trying to find our place, is we don't have anybody that we can mentor from in that sense. So we're trying to find our own footing. And that's really what I've been trying to do and trying to kind of find that home. And I don't know, this is a little bit off topic, but I really wanted to ask Michael, huge fan of all your work. I wanted to ask, you were producer on Master of None, correct?
Yeah. I'm the studio executive for Master of None.
Yeah, so Master of None, so we're still trying to get the Muslim, storyline. And even though Aziz Ansari doesn't identify himself as Muslim, his parents are. And so that was kind of like the first Muslim story, besides actually Rami is the first Muslim story. So I really wanted to know the marketing perspective for Master of None. I mean, that'd be really great to have an eye-opening because that was kind of in a Muslim story realm, but it was also just a guy, in New York.
Mm-hmm. What Aziz Ansari and Alan Yang do with Master of None is have every episode kind of feel different, like a standalone, even independent film, almost an independent short film. And so it's marketed as a whole, and Netflix, Universal Television produces Master of None and we license it to Netflix. So Netflix handles all of the marketing. So I'm not in the weeds on what they do, but I do know overall, they market it as a series as opposed to, now what Aziz does when he'll do interviews, he'll go deeper into the meaning behind some of these episodes, how he came up with it, why it's important for him to showcase all these different slices of life that he's become so familiar with. So that's what makes that show so special, because it's there's so much variety. There's so much kind of richness in the stories that he tells as a filmmaker. I say filmmaker, although it's a television show, because I feel like Master of None is such, it's film. It feels like, a film series.
Agreed. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Swanson, I'm going to cry right now because it's 4:59. Do you still have to leave at 5?
I do. I'm going to hang out a few more minutes.
Yes. Okay, good. Let me see. I'm pulling back up my questions here. So we've talked a bit about how to pitch it as a mainstream and a faith-based. So I feel like we're okay with that. Let me see. Michael, do we want to look at the humanize, not sanitize really quickly, or do we have some other quick producing questions?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to talk a little bit about this because here, let me just share a screen. Mainly because, oops, we'll go back up. Because there's always this really interesting, topic of, and I'll never forget, it was more of like this discussion I was hearing filmmakers talk about, like, and they were getting slammed for portraying their group. Like, I think it was at the time, I forget the film critic was supporting it, but it was I think it was like the Chinese in America that were being portrayed, and it wasn't put into a positive light, but it was a Chinese filmmaker doing the story. And the Chinese community wasn't really happy with it because it wasn't portraying it in a positive light, but they were saying this is part of the story. And so you have this discussion of like, do you tell stories of what you want the community to be, or in this case, how you want your religion to be seen? Because very often there are these unfortunate stereotypes, as we've seen here. Very often people are associating Muslims showing oppressing women and terrorists, but that's not the case. Or Christians are Bible thumping and fire and brimstone. And Jewish, is it all about the Holocaust? No, or the overbearing Jewish mother, right? And so it's more of like that discussion of like, do we as content creators, do we, where's that point in the fine line of like, do you tell the stories that you want to tell that might be not the best parts, or there might be people within the community that are like that? Or do you try to, get the overall general audience to kind of change perceptions, right? There's like what is the overall goal of changing perceptions versus trying to tell the stories themselves? And there's always that kind of struggle that I see, as a content creator, but also what I see from others. But I would love to kind of hear from the perspective from the group too, if they struggle with this. It's like, are you ever told like, oh, you should portray it as this way? And you're like, well, that's not how I want to do it.
I definitely can speak to this, especially as a Muslim storyteller. Because again, we're new for the 5th time. Muslims want only to show that, hey, we're such cool people. We are this, we're not bad, we're not this. And I'm like, yo, that's not going to be the way it works. Like, no one is going to connect with a character if they're not struggling, if they're not going through ups and downs, if they're not having trials and tribulations, right? We have to show the good and the bad in the character for us to relate to it. And it's okay to show that a character that's Muslim struggles with, alcohol or whatever, which is not usually a part of our religion, or, the issues that are happening. So in my community, I know it personally that there is a quote unquote backlash that happens if you portray something that they'll be like, oh, well, that's not what a Muslim character does, or that's not what Muslims do, but that's what you were having to show. And so that has been quite a challenge for a lot of Muslim filmmakers, especially like when I'm running this grant and we talk about Muslim filmmakers and stories is, they want to just show this kind of what I guess would portrayed as faith-based. It's like, what someone does when they fast, what someone does when they pray, and this is how it is, which feels like a documentary, like instead of, a true narrative where we're connecting and being strong storytellers. So that's been a kind of a bit of the challenge in my arena, I feel.
Got it.
Now, may I ask kind of a side question to that we had discussed, a little bit. So when you're pitching the project to different, and this is again for everybody, but I might call him Michael Swanson first because I know he's looking at his clock because he's got another meeting, y'all. He like stopped all of his meetings to join us for a while, which, everybody's awesome. But so when you are pitching to the different, categories of people and you're saying, okay, it's portraying these positive values. Are you also saying, So it's a romantic comedy, or Michael Fisk, you were saying that you were pitching some project to distributors in one of the foreign territories, that it was an action adventure film when it really has a huge faith-based element to it. And where's, is that something that you just kind of have to feel your way through with the individual? Should you, go, okay, we need to go this way for sales agents. We need to go this way for producing partners. We need to go this way for, a studio marketing person. Expand, please.
I tend to stay true to what the movie is and not try to slice and dice it for this person or that person. It is what it is. I mean, our company is called Faith Filmworks, and that means all kinds of things because we do all kinds of movies, but it's under that Faith Filmworks banner. But I will say it's a romantic comedy, or it's a romantic drama, or it's a thriller. We have a thriller. And so we just say what the movie is and don't apologize for what it is. And that has worked well for me over these past 20 years or so.
So you've had a little bit of experience, 20 years only. It's okay, But so you're leading a lot, it sounds like, with what more of the genre is.
Yeah.
And it also happens to have, a faith-based core to it within these parameters. And so, and again, this is kind of for everybody as well. So even though it's faith-based at its core for its beliefs and the values it's promoting, it's still following a lot of the same, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, Act 5, the same script elements that you would find in a mainstream script, as far as, what's happening when, and it's following line, joke, etc. If it's a comedy. Absolutely.
It's a real movie.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Okay. Let me see. Amy, Beth, would either of you like to, have comments on it from, different perspectives on that? And Michael, can we keep you longer or no?
I do have to run. I sincerely apologize. I'm so sorry, but thank you so much for having me, and I can't wait to come back.
Yes. Okay. Tomorrow it is.
Thank
you so much. Thank you so much, Michael. Everybody wave bye to Michael. So you've got like 100 people waving at you, Michael. Awesome.
Bye.
Thank you. Okay. Don't anybody else leave, because I have so much more to ask and learn.
Pull you back.
Awesome. Awesome. So let me see. So Amy, Beth, all of my ladies, Michael, look at you, surrounded with gorgeous women here, right? Doing awesome work. So are we all kind of in agreement as far as, you're pitching perhaps as, okay, it's the romantic comedy, it's the romantic drama. And it also happens to be about Muslims, about Christians or faith-based values, about Jewish individuals. And are there any other specifics, where you're going like, hey, this character, this, or what else? What are the details, tips and tricks can we write down right now in our notes?
I can just talk as a programmer, because, as a documentary filmmaker, that's completely different. That's, that's like years of your life and it's your passion. But as a programmer, I noticed you put down as stereotype the Holocaust, but the Holocaust is, that's just so ingrained in the Jewish people that the one thing that and it's such a heavy subject, is if you find a news story about the Holocaust, and there are so many news, it's amazing. What we said was to try to limit the amount of Holocaust films, really, because it gets to be too much. I mean, and look for other films. So I think,
when you say limit, is it when you're programming a festival? You're talking about programming a festival. Got it.
Yeah. And try to get an amazing, I think we got an amazing film about the Holocaust. It's called Winter Journey, about Martin Goldsmith. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's the host of Sirius Symphony Radio. And it's his exploration, and it stars Bruno Ganz in his last role before he died. I mean, it's just the most amazing film, and it brings out a whole new story. So it's very exciting to find something like that, to see and under the Holocaust in another light. We of course have to show films about the Holocaust because there's so many of them, but we do try to, as I said, limit them and look for special, fabulous, great films, that are new.
Yeah. And just happen to have an A-list German star. Why not?
Oh my God. It's just incredible. I mean, it's just a masterful movie. I was shocked to see it.
I just want to say I really appreciated Jojo Rabbit. I mean, that was another different way the Holocaust was portrayed. I mean, so amazing. Yes, just wanted to put that up.
Exactly. That was a shocker. It was like, what? You're kidding. And, to see it and realize, it was amazing.
Yeah. Iman, great point, because, you're not thinking, oh, this is a Holocaust story. You're thinking, okay, this is a weird angle. I'm going to have to go in with my funky glasses on or something but you're going like, how is this? Okay, it's a comedy. I have to check. Okay, what? So you're perfect example. It wasn't marketed specifically as a Holocaust film. It was marketed as a child's story, and it had some comedy in it, at least watching the trailers and everything and how it was marketed to me. So that's the awesome, perfect example of how do you reach that wider audience.
Yeah.
It was the point of view. It was the POV in that story, for sure.
Right, because I remember being like a little bit offended. I'm like, okay, I'm tired of people trying to humanize Hitler. Like, this is terrible. But the way that, Taika Waititi did it, I was just like really amazed, because like you were saying, Beth, it was the point of view of the child, and it was so moving. It's probably on my top 10. That was a really strong film.
Yeah.
Well, it's like The Tin Drum. I don't know if you've seen that. That was, a child's point of view. It's amazing film.
Yeah.
Okay, watch out. You're going to get a whole bunch of entries from a child's point of view now. Everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And they're multi-faith somehow. We're going to make them believe in all the, the ancient Greeks, because why not? We haven't seen that for a while. So forgive me. I know we do. I could just talk for forever, everybody. Michael, you had a couple of specific,
talk about
marketing campaigns you wanted to talk about.
Near the end, because we have limited time now. Just talk to Amy's slide, mainly from a marketing perspective, but these marketing ideas are really it kind of should give you an idea of like how these are more towards the Christian faith-based films, but it can be towards others too. And it's kind of the thinking that needs to be done when you're actually talking to a studio, or you're trying to pitch it to be sold. Like, these are those ideas. And so, Amy, I'm going to pull it up here. And if you don't mind talking a little bit about some of the great experience that you have, particularly with Heavens for Real, and just kind of like touch for a couple of minutes, just kind of touch upon some of them. And it just kind of spurs ideas that others can possibly think about.
Well, I was also going to say, I was just going to add, before I go into the slide real quick, I also wanted to bring up just a totally different genre that we're not talking about here, which is horror films. They tend to usually be steeped in some sort of religious doctrine, from a Jewish faith, from
the Curse of La Llorona is a good example.
Absolutely. There are a ton of them. And they usually, one of the reasons that they're really great stories is because, they're controversial about some aspect, some book, something's gotten unlocked and needs to go back in. It's kind of usually the thing that happened. But again, it's just another genre where the story has to be scary and compelling. And it doesn't matter what your faith is. Again, I just wanted to put out another storytelling genre where faith is an important piece, and it can be told from a lot of different perspectives. But for Heaven is for Real, this definitely was this is definitely a Christian story. It was based on a true story. If you're not familiar with it, a little boy named Colton died on a hospital and was pronounced dead. And then he came back, he went to heaven. And anyway, it was a really beautiful book. It was based on a true story. So that was one of our key marketing tactics, is to use this true story to compel the movie. I will say we use the family sparingly, only in the sense that they are part of a very strong evangelical group, and not every Christian, just like we talk about, not everybody who's Jewish is the same things. Not everybody who's Muslim is the same group. Same thing within the Christian group. So we didn't want to have somebody who's evangelical go to, some other group they're going to be kind of turned off by the story. The book had been a bestseller. It was at 8 million copies sold before we even went into production. So already there was some equity in the title, but we really leaned into that whole mystery of, hey, this child was pronounced dead. And when he came back, he had information that a child would not know about his family. So we really wanted to tell that piece of the marketing. We screened it heavily at churches, within communities. We invited church leaders. I talked about mommy bloggers, there's daddy bloggers that came as well. People who are really active within that community. Youth groups also saw the film. There was part of the story that's really emotional was the mom had a miscarriage and was talking about the baby that wasn't born. And that's who Colton met in heaven. And so we want to really talk about that in a sensitive way with moms. And again, this is something you would never tell a child. So how would he know this? Is kind of the interesting point. But it's not part of a central marketing campaign. You don't want to have a story just about that. So it's something that you contextually can talk about within groups or at events, but not something that would be a mainstream selling point. We really started within what we call the Bible Belt, which is the southern part of the United States. That's where we really built up a lot of the momentum for it. Rascal Flatts, which is a big country band, did a cover song for the film. And again, we had a big Easter weekend, and that was a really big focus for us, was how to celebrate Easter and be able to talk about some of these themes within groups after you see the film. I wanted to put up here too, because I know some of you are content creators. On the right-hand side, at the top is the one sheet, the poster for the theatrical marketing, which shows just kind of like a door open, and heaven is always shown like with a light shining through. And so that was kind of the mystery, like what is this door that was opened? But when it came to the home theatrical release, you can see the poster below, which is there, it's a much more brighter, the mystery is kind of gone, if you will. So I want to show the different ways that this is the same film, but it has very different look and feel.
Yeah, and I think
that was a very quick run through of a campaign, but I will tell you, Heaven is for Real was one of those films where it was so much grassroots, and not a stat that they love to tell, but the film ended up making, in profit-wise, more than a Spider-Man film because of, if you really think about it. So it's something where the studio was going, wait a minute, there is something to people who are telling unique stories. And I think when we look at directors, and I think, Susan, you brought up a good point, that when you have a director who is passionate and is looking at, and I think the whole entertainment industry right now is really looking for people who are telling diverse stories, people who are bringing a different point of view than what we've seen over and over again. And I think this is an example of this is a different point of view that was not considered marketable before and ended up making a ton of money, but it was still inspired audiences.
Yeah, and I think it's important, like you hammered it home really well, is that, the films, particularly with a Christian faith base, they make them for a few, like 10 million, but then for production, but then they actually do really well, and they're very profitable when they're done well. And I think the other thing to note too, for those who are on the call, is that, as you could see, like if you're able to leverage and target in, if it's book-based, target book readers. If you have a country music star, it's really important to, use music as the angle. Like anything that's in that, you try to tease out every single parts and different parts. Every movie's different, but tease out those type of groups that you might be able to go after. And then Jen, I know for time-wise, I'm just going to go to the next one quick. And then I know it's kind of just a little bit here. Worked on The Shack, and just the one thing to note too is that, there, Amy is so funny, you said the ray of light, because it is, it's almost cliche, but there has to be some sort of ray of light, right? But it's not necessarily. But music, with particularly country, if you can get a music star attached, Tim McGraw was the one with The Shack, with this one with Sam Worthington and Octavia Spencer. But, you leave in there, but definitely targeting the community church outreach, mommy blogger, same thing. So you see a lot of the similarities here. The one thing to note too is it's very important to also hire faith-based consultants, because we talk about, like, if you're going to be targeting church communities, you better be, you better be true, like, in the sense that they can sniff it out when you're not sincere. They can sniff it out when you're, as Amy said, it's not authentic. As we always say, the authenticity, I think even Susan Iman, you're talking about the authenticity about it. They can smell it a mile away, and you can have consultants who can kind of help with the minefields. And if you just have to Google search, anywhere, you'll find a ton of them. But then also, if you're going to target media, that kind of changes there too. So anyway, so those two kind of give you kind of ideas, particularly on a Christian faith base, of like how that marketing distribution angles can be, and to make it profitable.
Michael, if I can jump in really quickly, I know both you and Amy are going like, okay, yeah, it has to have a ray of light. I know it's a little cliche-y, but I mean, I think that's key to understand when people are doing their own promotion and they're trying to figure it out. Oh, okay, what are some things that are always present? And I loved also on those examples, in addition to having that, ray of light coming, because that's symbolic. You don't see God waving at you or something there in the clouds, but people, oh, okay, must be something to do with faith. I see a ray of light coming down. So there's a lot of symbolism involved in marketing, period, not just, for faith-based films. So I was just I found that to be very key information when, trying to put my own materials together, that, okay, look at what all these other successful ones have done. And they've got more hints of it. I mean, you didn't see Octavia Spencer waving at you and Tim McGraw with his guitar or something, but you know what I mean? So, but it was, there was a lot of implication in those specific materials. So there we go, everybody, start Googling your comp shows and your comp films and everything. And, oh, okay, notice these elements that helped make them successful and show the tone of the show and, what people should be expecting from it just by using some of those common symbols.
I will say to that point, Jennifer, someone I've worked on so many Christian films from different, again, I was saying horror films.
Yeah.
And I will say that what's interesting is the cross is something that's very controversial to show. And depending on the film that you're marketing, if it is a faith film, or if it is a comedy or something inspirational, usually you do not show a cross. If it's a horror film, you almost always show a cross. And I don't know why, it just kind of
cross, right? They do it. Yeah. It's
yes. And so like, there's these weird things that I've just kind of, this is not written in any textbook.
Yeah.
Same thing with, I will say to Beth's point, almost always with like something that's a Holocaust, some kind of, they almost always show the Star of David, like a necklace or something to, kind of say this is who they identify as, or the yellow band. Like they want to make sure you understand what the stakes are. And I've been in quite a few movies or meetings where the Nazis we're always like, they're the ultimate bad guy. All you have to say is Nazis, and everybody's like, oh, I know who's, we're not cheering for them. And it's an interesting, you can set it up very quickly and move on to what the story is, because everybody's familiar with who the bad guy is.
Yeah.
And I do say that I think what's interesting now is, and I love having Iman and Susan on here, is people don't want to see the typical, Middle Eastern bad guy anymore with a bomb or any, like, audiences do not want that. And you see that from testing, and people are like, the stakes aren't high enough. They feel like it's cheesy, it's been done. And actually, I think that's a good thing. That means that people are evolving in their tastes, and they're saying, I have friends that what are you doing? Like, it's just not it's not the 90s anymore. Like, move on. It's, and I
actually,
think it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. That, I wanted to ask because, I'm more familiar with Christian and Jewish faiths as opposed to, Muslim and, kind of that more part of the world, pardon me. But, so we know cross, we know Star of David, we know Headscarf, you know what I mean? I love that book, Mazda Brani, Please, Can I Laugh Harder? No. But so, I'm not a terrorist, but I played one on TV. That we showed briefly earlier. But so are there other, Susan and Iman, speaking more directly to your faith, are there certain symbols or things that you're like, oh yeah, you always need to have this in here. This is going to help sell the concept in the one quick look.
I think that
I have stunned you.
I've been listening really deeply and drinking in drinking in the notes from Beth and the notes from Amy and thinking how early we are in our journey. Because if I compare, let's say I'm comparing our first generation, and I believe Marjoun was the first Arab American or Muslim American piece of fiction that was ever at Sundance in 2006. So we're very early. And I was thinking about Iman's coming feature from what I know of it, and then my feature and the show Rami. And I was thinking about how faith obsessed we all are. And it's because we're working out, and I'm in my daily life, I don't think I'm faith obsessed. Well, I am. I mean, I believe it's part of my life, but I'm not like as obsessed maybe as it is maybe showing in my body of work, or showing in the series Rami. I wonder in real life how is he walking through his life. And if I compare that to makers like Haifa Al-Mansour, who I've met, and Wajda, and her body of work and work that's coming from outside of the US, I'm thinking about that we're defining our identities and we're so early in our journey still, because as Iman said, there's nobody. And I've thought about that a lot. When Iman said there's nobody, I've thought about that. I've thought about like, who is my role model, or who did this before me, or how do I do this, or what are the rules? So there are no rules, so we're making them up ourselves. I will say that I have found the community to be incredibly, incredibly forgiving. I've made a documentary, 2 features, and 8 shorts. I'm not Soderbergh. I don't have. I would love to have a roster of 10 plus. It's, hey, we live a long time, so we still I can get there. But in the body of work that I've been making consistently for over 10 years, I have found that there's never been I watch tomorrow, but there's never been a backlash against my work. And my work is not graphic. I mean, there is not nudity, there's not even really kissing, but there are very serious themes. There are themes about sexuality. There are themes about, there's some handling of violence, illegal acts, betrayal of family, nationalism. There are things that we're handling. And I have found the community to be incredibly forgiving and space giving, because of how authentic, and back to Amy, what Amy said, how authentic the story really is. And I found actually that maybe they were more forgiving and more giving more space than traditional institutions. That were maybe, there was one festival has shown 4 of my works and would not show Marjoun. And it's a festival within the community. I'll tell you all afterwards. It's very shocking. And we were really surprised, but we found that within the screenings that we had space. So the door I found when people were looking at Marjoun, and it was a faith-based film, and someone like Evan Al-Sultani, who I referred to again, who specializes in Arab American studies, who's incredible. I had a call with her and I said, the films are doing well, and I'm so proud of Rami. And she said, Rami's still a man. He's still a man. Where is the woman equivalent of Rami? Where is she in the studio system, in film or in TV? Where is she? And that is one thing I've been examining, is when and where are we getting there? What's the body of work? What is our symbols? What are we using? But we're so early in the progression, so it's so hard for me to tell you what's the equivalent of the cross in horror versus rom-com or family film. We're so early. I don't have that. I only have a comparison of my work to Homeland. Like, how do I handle prayer to Homeland? Like in my film, my feature, there is no prayer scene because after watching Homeland, I didn't want to put a prayer scene in my film. I just thought that's all we're showing is people praying. It's okay. I don't. We can have faith observance in a different way. So I just think that's because we're so early, we're still just creating those symbols now, and hopefully so. There's one thing I wanted to say that was really important.
I'm so sorry, we're at 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning. We're gonna get shut off.
I want to share, I didn't bring it up earlier. Was that the one space that my films have done very, very well, and that has not been brought up yet, is university and high school spaces. And it is very profitable. There's a lot of it. It's nationwide, and it comes very easily. And that's how the films become a part of the canon. And that's where I've found a lot of freedom.
I love it. See, and that's another action item that we can, remind people to do. Ladies and gentlemen, it's driving me absolutely nuts because we're at 5:29 and I've been told, hey, 5:30, we're shutting you down. No! All right, y'all, we are giving away 4 copies of Final Draft, the latest download. So please, please, please go look in the chat. I just put in the link a moment ago. It's the same link. One's the longer link, one's the shortened form of the link because sometimes one doesn't work. So let's put both in. While you are clicking on that link, yes, look at these wonderful resources that we have.
The one thing to note just here is there's quite a few resources, and I think it's important to note this one is more dedicated because, as you're saying, Susan, it's so nascent, right? Particularly getting Muslim characters in film and TV, which was really heartening. I was able to talk with Alex Kronemer at MOST, which is the Muslims on Screen and Television. If you're looking for counsel with, they'll be able to help out there. Muslim Public Affairs Council is really important. I know, Iman and Susan, you recommended, and I forget who said, but the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding is actually a really good resource, as well as the Islamic Scholarship Fund, less of a resource, but more as like someone to be able to help, help filmmakers, right? So those are really what is really heartening is that there are these wonderful resources out there. I saw a lot of questions, particularly with faith-based consultants. I mean, in the Christian faith-based one, I mean, literally there are dozens. I mean, the studios use a bunch. It's, it's hard to say which ones are the best. I mean, literally all you have to do is literally Google that word, that phrase, top faith-based film TV consultant agency, and you're going to see a bunch. And many of those looking at them, I've known and worked with, so just go there and you'll find them there too. So, and I don't know, Beth, if there's certain consultants or resources that of, let us know too, particularly for the Jewish faith.
Actually, we get together. All the Jewish film festivals in the United States do have a get together every so often and meet and discuss. So,
that's great.
Yeah.
I love it. So yeah, it's all interrelated, everybody. People talk with each other. All right, ladies and gentlemen, a huge, huge, huge thank you to Amy, Beth, Susan, Iman, Michael, the Writers Guild, Michael Swanson,
Michael Swanson, yes.
Michael squared here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so, so much for your time and your insight. I can't wait to do part 2 of this panel because I feel like we've barely scratched the surface.
Yeah,
so all of my wonderful attendees, awesome. Thank you for coming today. Please, again, fill in the survey. The more, even if you filled it in once, or, please fill it in again, because the more information, the more data we have, the better, the prettier, shinier, more attractive we are to sponsors. And we want more of those. So we need your input, please. And again, in there, also tell us what else you want to learn about. Let's get stronger, everybody.
Yes, and keep in touch. We saw a lot of people kept in touch in the chat. Someone put together a little link to keep in touch with everyone, and that's what we want to see too. Network with one another, help each other out through this entire industry of ours. And Jennifer, thank you so much for moderating so expertly as always.
Oh, I love you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Go to your next meeting, to your next writing assignment, to your next drink. I don't know. Thank you so much, everybody. And we will see you soon. Thank you.